Prohibition wasn't jazz and jokes, it was chaos with badges. Today, 33 dumb prohibition myths people keep repeating like facts. Like how the government literally poisoned industrial alcohol to stop drinkers. And how speakeasies were often obvious hotspots, not secret basements. Stay for number 33 because the last one is insane. Al Capone went down for taxes, not bootlegging. Capone ended up in federal prison, and bootlegging was sidelined. In Chicago, prosecutors chased his money trail, not his trucks. Treasury agent Frank Wilson quietly built ledgers from seized books. Witnesses described payments, while accountants matched receipts to hidden income. In 1931, a last-minute plea deal collapsed in court. Judge James Wilkerson swapped juries, spooking the Capone team. The trial focused on numbers, vacations, and flashy suits, oddly. Tax evasion convictions hit harder because paper evidence rarely forgets. Bootlegging made him famous, but taxes finally put bars around him. 2. Eliot Ness didn't personally put Capone behind bars. Everyone remembers Eliot Ness, but the paperwork tells another story. In late 1920s Chicago, he led a small prohibition squad. They raided breweries, smashed stills, and seized trucks near warehouses. Capone's empire kept humming because juries and witnesses vanished. The actual takedown came from IRS investigators and federal prosecutors. Ness became a symbol after memoirs, radio, and later Hollywood. Even Ness admitted the tax case mattered more than raids. His biggest win was pressure, making bribery less comfortable. So Capone fell to accountants, while Ness took the spotlight. 3. Prohibition didn't create organized crime. It supercharged it. Prohibition turned street gangs into corporations with payrolls and lawyers. Before 1920, many crews fought over gambling and neighborhood rackets. Once liquor went illegal, every bottle became a moving payday. In New York, Johnny Torrio and later Al Capone studied systems. They bought trucks, hired gunmen, and bribed police captains regularly. Rivals answered with ambushes, like the Valentine's Day garage shooting. Cities saw syndicates coordinate supply, pricing, and territory maps. When repeal arrived, those networks simply pivoted into other crimes. The law didn't invent gangsters, it upgraded their business model. 4. The government really did poison industrial alcohol supplies. Thousands were hurt when toxic booze quietly entered the black market. During the 1920s, bootleggers stole industrial alcohol for cheap supply. Federal officials ordered denaturing, adding poisons so it tasted unbearable. Chemists changed formulas, and bootleggers tried redistilling to remove toxins. Some batches kept methanol and other contaminants, and drinkers paid. New York hospitals filled, and newspaper morgues tracked grim weekly totals. Enforcement leaders argued it was deterrence, not murder, on paper. Doctors and reformers begged Washington to stop, as deaths mounted. It's the dark twist. The state fought alcohol with poison. 5. Bootleg liquor wasn't always moonshine made in backwoods. A lot of bootleg liquor was imported, not backyard moonshine. In Detroit, smugglers ran Canadian whiskey across the frozen river. On Rum Row, ships carried real Caribbean rum and European spirits. Some gangs hijacked bonded warehouse barrels, already aged and labeled. Pharmacies sold legit whiskey by prescription, complete with tax stamps. Of course, plenty was rough, including sugar wash and fake blends. Drinkers learned by smell, burn, and the next morning's headache. The myth survives because movies love jars, lanterns, and shacks. Reality was global, with supply chains that looked shockingly modern. 6. Speakeasies weren't always secret, many were openly known. Some speakeasies were basically nightclubs, hiding in plain sight. In New York, Well-known spots operated behind unmarked doors. But regulars lined up anyway, because everyone knew the routine. Owners paid protection, sometimes weekly, to cops and local politicians. A doorman might ask a question, but it was theater. Jazz bands played, dancers packed floors, and bartenders worked fast. Raids happened, yet many clubs reopened the next night. For wealthy patrons, secrecy meant discretion, not invisibility exactly. So the myth of hidden basements misses the loud reality. 7. Bathtub gin rarely came from actual bathtubs. Bathtub gin became a punchline, but most of it wasn't. Many home mixers use kitchen jars, not porcelain tubs. The name stuck because cheap alcohol came from awkward piping tricks. People flavored neutral spirits with juniper oil, sugar, and extracts. It often tasted harsh, so citrus and honey became lifesavers. In apartments, friends gathered, whispering while the radio played softly. Sometimes the liquor was fine, because it started as decent alcohol. Other times it burned, and nobody trusted the next bottle. So bathtub gin is really a label for improvised cocktails. 8. Medicinal whiskey prescriptions weren't a free drinking pass. Doctors suddenly became gatekeepers, and whiskey sales surged through pharmacies. The law allowed medicinal alcohol, but it required a doctor's form. In cities like Baltimore and New York, lines formed at drugstores. Some physicians refused, while others wrote prescriptions like candy. Pharmacists kept records, counted ounces, and stored bottles behind counters. Fraud happened, but inspectors could audit paperwork and revoke permits. Patients claimed everything from nerves to flu needed whiskey therapy. Meanwhile, real medicine advanced, and whiskey looked less magical. So prescriptions weren't a cheat code, they were controlled loopholes. 9. Communion wine loopholes were tighter than people think. Religious wine stayed legal, but it didn't mean endless parties. Churches and synagogues needed sacramental wine for services and rituals. Federal permits governed suppliers, with paperwork for shipments and storage. Some people tried joining congregations just to access bottles. Clergy faced scrutiny because sudden demand looked suspicious fast. There were scandals, including fake rabbis ordering wine in bulk. Authorities investigated, and some permits were suspended or tightened. For most believers, the wine stayed modest, tied to ceremonies. The loophole existed, but it came with rules and watchers. 10. Near beer was legal, but it was almost water. Near beer kept breweries alive, but it barely felt like beer. Under the Volstead rules, anything over about 0.5% was illegal. Big brands like Anheuser-Busch pivoted to cereal drinks and sodas. Near beer was brewed, then alcohol was removed, often ruining flavor. Customers complained it tasted thin, like someone whispered hops nearby. Some saloons served it openly, pretending it kept traditions intact. Others spiked it secretly, which brought raids and seized kegs. The product shows the era's absurd line drawing, down to decimals. So yes, it was legal, but your buzz stayed imaginary. 11. Cocktail culture existed before Prohibition. It just adapted. Cocktails didn't appear in speakeasies, they just got louder there. Long before 1920, American bartenders mixed sours, fizzes, and punches. In hotels and clubs, drink manuals circulated, including Jerry Thomas classics. When liquor quality dropped, bartenders leaned on citrus, sugar, and bitters. That's how the bee's knees in sidecar gained real momentum. Speakeasy menus became camouflage, hiding rough spirits under fancy names. Ice, once a luxury, became essential for smoothing harsh edges. After repeal, many recipes stayed because people loved the theater. So Prohibition didn't invent cocktails, it forced them to evolve. 12. Prohibition didn't ban owning alcohol you already had. Some Americans partied on perfectly legal bottles, bought before the ban. When the 18th Amendment kicked in, possession wasn't automatically criminal. Wealthy households stocked cellars, treating whiskey like canned food. Hotels and clubs also had inventories, locked away under new rules. Those bottles became status symbols, served at private dinners and parties. But selling them was risky because agents watched suspicious traffic. Some collectors forged receipts, claiming pre-ban purchases for new stock. Meanwhile, ordinary workers rarely had cash to hoard anything. So legality depended on timing, and timing became its own currency. 13. Wine and beer didn't stay legal while spirits were banned. People imagined beer stayed fine, but the ban hit everything. The Constitution Amendment targeted intoxicating liquor, including beer and wine. The Volstead Act set the low threshold, turning even mild drinks illegal. Breweries collapsed or converted, and many wineries ripped out vineyards. Some California growers switched to grapes meant for shipping, not sipping. Families made home wine using legal fruit, skating on muddy rules. Enforcement varied by state, so one town winked, another jailed. That confusion fed the myth that only hard liquor mattered. In reality, the net was wide, and everyone felt it. 14. Most Americans didn't suddenly become lawbreakers overnight. America didn't turn criminal overnight, but the culture did shift. In small towns, many people simply drank less, or stopped. Others moved drinking indoors, from saloons to living rooms. Police often prioritized violence, not quiet parties behind drawn curtains. But in big cities, speakeasies made breaking the law feel normal. Middle-class couples danced, tipped doormen, then went home. That social blend blurred lines because the customers weren't outsiders. Still, plenty citizens hated Prohibition and protested through politics. So the story is messy. Not everyone became a gangster. 15. Rum Row was real, but it wasn't pirate fantasy. Rum Row looked like a floating city, just beyond U.S. reach. Off New Jersey, ships anchored outside territorial waters, loaded with booze. Smaller boats dashed in at night, chasing shore lights and fog. Captains used code names and radio signals, not pirate swords. Federal agents watched with binoculars, then tried intercepts near inlets. Sometimes storms wrecked runs, spilling crates and rumors onto beaches. The smuggling network connected Canada, the Caribbean, and Europe. A famous name, William McCoy, sold unwatered liquor, supposedly. So Rum Row was commerce, not swashbuckling, and it paid. 16. The Coast Guard wasn't helpless against smugglers at sea. Smugglers feared the Coast Guard because the cutters got fast. During Prohibition, budgets grew, and new boats hunted rum runners. Crews trained for chases in rough Atlantic waters, especially at night. They used spotlights, sirens, and sometimes warning shots, within limits. Captured vessels were seized, and cargo became evidence in federal court. Smugglers adapted with faster engines, hidden coves, and decoy boats. But many runs failed because radios crackled and informants talked. The service even recruited aviation help, spotting boats from above. So it wasn't helpless, it was an arms race on water. 17. Chicago wasn't the only bootlegging capital city. Chicago grabbed headlines, but bootlegging kingdoms popped up everywhere. New York had Tammany connections, and neighborhoods ran their own supply. Detroit boomed because Windsor sat across the river like a pantry. Kansas City stayed wet under boss Tom Pendergast's friendly protection. In New Orleans, ports and bayous offered routes police couldn't cover. Even rural areas had stills, hidden in hills and barns. Each city mixed politics, ethnicity, and geography into its smuggling style. That variety is why the era feels like 1,000 stories. Chicago was iconic, but the map of vice was national. 18. Gangsters didn't invent the machine gun for Prohibition. The Thompson gun became a Prohibition symbol, but it predates it. John T. Thompson designed it after World War I battlefield lessons. Early models were marketed to militaries, police, and even security guards. Gangsters bought them anyway, because firepower ended arguments fast. In Chicago, the weapon appeared in raids, drive-bys, and photos. Reporters nicknamed it the Tommy gun, and the name stuck. Police departments also adopted Thompsons, worried about being outgunned. So the gun wasn't invented for crime, crime simply made it famous. Prohibition didn't create the weapon, it created the demand for it. 19. St. Valentine's Day Massacre didn't end Prohibition. The Valentine's Day Massacre shocked America, yet liquor kept flowing. In February 1929 Chicago, 7 men lined up in a garage. They belonged to George Bugs Moran's crew, rivals of Capone. Attackers wore police-style uniforms, turning surrender into a trap. Machine gun bursts ended it, and the city woke up furious. Capone was in Florida, but public suspicion stuck to him. Politicians promised crackdowns, yet corruption still greased many doors. Bootlegging adapted quickly because demand didn't die with headlines. The massacre changed PR, not the market, and Prohibition limped on. 20. Prohibition agents were often underpaid, corrupt, and outgunned. Enforcing Prohibition often felt like chasing smoke with empty pockets. Agents were paid modestly, yet faced gangs with real payrolls. Bribes appeared daily, cash, cases, or friendly favors in envelopes. Some agents resisted, like Izzy Einstein in New York, using disguises. Others flipped, tipping off raids or losing evidence on purpose. Gunfights happened, especially near warehouses, river docks, and rural stills. Jurors feared retaliation, so witnesses vanished or suddenly forgot details. Federal officers tried rotating crews, but local politics stayed sticky. So enforcement was uneven because the enforcers were human targets. 21. Temperance wasn't only church ladies, big business backed it. Temperance wasn't just sermons, it had boardrooms writing checks. Industrialists like Henry Ford hated drunkenness on factory floors. Safety accidents, mischiefs, and fights threatened profits and schedules. Groups like the Anti-Saloon League lobbied with modern political tactics. They printed flyers, tracked votes, and pressured candidates relentlessly. Some businesses funded dry campaigns, while others quietly sold alternatives. Brewers fought back, but wartime patriotism painted beer as suspicious. So the crusade spread beyond churches into money, influence, and law. It's weirdly modern, morals plus marketing, and it worked. 22. Prohibition wasn't just morality, wartime politics fueled it. World War I politics pushed Prohibition forward, faster than morality alone. Leaders argued grain should feed soldiers, not fill beer vats. Breweries were tied to German-American culture, making them easy targets. Congress passed wartime restrictions, then activists used that momentum afterward. Dry politicians framed drinking as unpatriotic, even dangerous during crisis. Meanwhile, soldiers returned, and the country tried reshaping itself. The amendment campaign rode that wave, winning states one by one. By 1920, the ban arrived with a patriotic stamp still attached. So war didn't cause Prohibition, but it supplied rocket fuel. 23. The Volstead Act didn't start Prohibition, the amendment did. Prohibition started with the Constitution, then Congress filled in details. The 18th Amendment set the ban, but it didn't define intoxicating. So lawmakers passed the Volstead Act, spelling out enforcement rules. That act created definitions, permits, and penalties, down to tiny percentages. Police chiefs, judges, and agents suddenly had a manual to follow. Bootleggers read it too, hunting loopholes like treasure maps. When raids happened, Lawyers argued fine print, not morality, in court. So the myth flips it, because the amendment was the real trigger. Volstead just built the fence after the land was already seized. 24. Volstead wasn't the man who wrote the law. Andrew Volstead got the name credit, but he wasn't the author. He was a Minnesota congressman who sponsored the enforcement bill. Behind the scenes, temperance strategists pushed language and definitions aggressively. Wayne Wheeler of the Anti-Saloon League is often linked to drafting. Volstead carried it through Congress, steering votes and amendments. He wasn't famous like Capone, so the law's name became his legacy. Reporters simplified the story because audiences remember people, not committees. That branding stuck, even though the text came from many hands. So Volstead is a label, not a lone writer with a pen. 25. Prohibition didn't actually make drinking disappear in America. People kept drinking, they just changed where, how, and what. City apartments hosted bottle parties, while rural barns hosted secret dances. Some drinkers switched to wine because fruit was easier to hide. Others bought from bootleggers, risking bad liquor and sudden raids. Restaurants quietly served drinks in coffee cups, winking at regulars. Musicians played, money moved, and the night economy never fully stopped. So consumption didn't vanish, it went underground and got riskier. The law changed behavior, not desire, and desire always finds routes. Alcohol consumption fell at first, then rebounded differently. At first, alcohol use dropped, then it slowly crawled back. Early enforcement shut many saloons, cutting easy access overnight. Families noticed quieter streets, fewer public drunks, and fewer fights. Then bootleg supply expanded, and prices fell as networks matured. Speakeasies multiplied, especially in New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia. By the late 1920s, drinking patterns looked different, not gone. People drank stronger spirits because smuggling concentrates value per bottle. That shift fueled poisonings and hangovers, even when total volume lagged. So the rebound wasn't simple. It changed the whole menu. 27. Home distilling wasn't legal even if everyone tried. Home distilling sounded folksy, but it could land you in jail. Agents raided farm sheds and city basements, hunting illegal stills. Neighbors reported strange smells, late-night fires, and constant visitors. Some families made cider or wine, believing it was safer legally. But strong spirits were different, and prosecutors treated them as manufacturing. In court, seized equipment became props, lined up like trophies. The risk wasn't just arrest, it was contaminated liquor hurting friends. That's why bootleggers preferred big operations, spreading risk and bribes. So homemade didn't mean harmless, it meant illegal and unpredictable. 28. Bootleggers didn't always drive fast cars through back roads. The movie chase is fun, but most booze move boringly. Big shipments traveled by truck convoys, rail cars, and boats. Drivers used legitimate company names with crates labeled as groceries. Some routes ran in daylight because nobody expects crime at noon. Speed mattered during a raid, but planning mattered every other day. Bribes, schedules, and safe garages replaced heroic steering through dust. When chases happened, they often ended with wrecks and arrests. Many smugglers preferred quiet payoffs because attention kills business. So the real engine was logistics, not just horsepower. 29. NASCAR's bootleg origin story is half true. NASCAR's origin story starts with bootleggers, but it's not only them. In the South, some drivers did modify cars to outrun police. Those skills carried into racing on dirt tracks and beach courses. After Prohibition, illegal liquor still existed, keeping the cat and mouse alive. Promoters like Bill France Sr. wanted rules, purses, and legitimacy. In 1948, NASCAR formed, pulling together regional races under one banner. Some early stars had bootlegging ties, but many were just racers. The myth sticks because it feels rebellious, like speed with a secret. Reality is mixed. Prohibition lore plus business planning and motorsport. 30. Many speakeasy passwords were marketing, not security. Speakeasy passwords sound spy level, but many were pure branding. In some clubs, the password changed daily, like a gimmick. Regulars learned it from bartenders, taxi drivers, or the band. Sometimes the door guy waved you in, if you looked wealthy. That wasn't security, it was theater to make risk feel thrilling. Real secrecy happened in bookkeeping, stash rooms, and bribed phone calls. When police raided, nobody's password saved them from handcuffs. So, passwords sold romance, while the real shield was corruption. 31. Jazz clubs weren't automatically speakeasies, and vice varied. Jazz clubs weren't automatically illegal, but the scene overlapped constantly. In Harlem, the Cotton Club featured jazz, dancing, and strict gatekeeping. Some venues sold alcohol, others focused on music and skirted trouble. Police attention depended on neighborhood politics, race, and who complained. Musicians toured between Chicago, New York, and Kansas City hotspots. A club could be legal entertainment, then become illegal after hours. That blur created legends, where every trumpet solo sounds criminal. But many performers just wanted steady work, not bootleg drama. So, jazz isn't a synonym for speakeasy, even if paired often. 32. Women didn't get the vote because of Prohibition. Women's suffrage wasn't a Prohibition reward, it was its own fight. Activists like Susan B. Anthony pushed decades before national prohibition. By 1920, the 19th Amendment passed after long marches and arrests. Temperance groups like the WCTU did mobilize women politically, though. Some dry leaders supported suffrage, hoping women voters would back prohibition. But many suffragists opposed prohibition, and many dry men opposed suffrage. The movements overlapped, then clashed, like two trains sharing tracks. In state campaigns, the alliances shifted, depending on region and party. So the vote wasn't payment, it was won through separate pressure. 33. Prohibition didn't improve health for everyone. Poisoning rose. Prohibition promised public health, yet hospitals saw new kinds of harm. People drank contaminated liquor because bootleg supply had no safety checks. Some consumers turned to stronger spirits, increasing binge drinking risks. In cities, emergency rooms treated blindness and poisoning tied to bad alcohol. Police also reported fewer bar fights in some areas at first. But domestic drinking moved behind doors, where problems were easier to hide. Doctors debated whether overall consumption fell enough to claim victory. Then the poisoned industrial alcohol policy added tragedy on top. So health outcomes were mixed, and the worst cases were shocking.